are the places you can go on the internet that have captured this primitive urge to engage in social interaction in all sorts of ways that are just engaging as heck and keep people coming back for hours and hours and hours of what many critics say is interesting entertainment, but not terribly productive life. I'm not sure I agree with that last one, but certainly that's out there. What I've been doing the last 4 or 5 years in both research here at Stanford and also working with the business community is trying to figure out how you can bottle a lot of that social engagement that these folks have figured out and drop it on problems in the enterprise, social problems, other areas where you keep the engagement but actually channel the energy into different criteria other than just entertainment. So let me start with 9 guys that work at 9 avatars of people that work at IBM. They're actually doing real work. They meet clients from IBM. They meet regularly, almost daily. The CIO at IBM has almost now finished assigning an avatar to each person that works at IBM. They meet in this virtual world. They're socializing, representing themselves in ways that are very familiar if you're playing World of Warcraft or if you are socializing in Second Life, or even if you're looking at the more casual games. This is very familiar, and it looks a little bit more fun, at least. That's a prospect than a typical meeting that you might have at IBM. But what is happening here that might be useful for engagement, which is a critical concern for people that are dealing with information overload and employee relations now? What's happening here that we might be able to use? And let me give you a little bit of summary of this is actually from the book, of my take on the organizational behavioral literature for what might be useful to apply that engagement to. So this is, we'll call him Bob. He's got a job, I'm sure unlike all of your jobs, because Bob is bored, his work is dull, and these are the things that he's looking for at work. He's most importantly looking for purpose and engagement. He'd like to find that in work that he realizes is repetitive and dull, maybe stunningly so on occasion. He's forced to collaborate. The guys at IBM on an average part of about 10 different teams have 4 bosses, 2 of whom they've never met. But he's got to collaborate in these decentralized organizations, and he's got to innovate in work environments that are just slow, legacy-bound, crowded with all kinds of information that mostly he thinks is useless, rather. And with a big picture of how his micro contribution is actually playing out in the larger organization. And these are the tools that Bob has to find that purpose and engagement. And I won't offer a long critique here, but a lot of us probably could fill in detail that these are not the tools. They may be precise with respect to the objective criteria of business design, but they are not anywhere close to being engaging and really dealing with this search for fulfillment and compelling interactions. Okay, so Bob has an alter ego. This is actually the same one. This is actually from an illustration that Harvard Business Review at great risk, in my view, drew for an article that we had that appeared here. Here's what Bob is doing after hours, mostly, not always. But he's in these worlds. He's using software that is probably the most sophisticated collaborative technology that he can find. I missed Bob's. He's found engagement. He's involved in this sophisticated play, and it's fun in a very street sense of the word, but it's also engaging in a probably a more substantial way. He's getting constant feedback about how things are going. I mean, moment by moment, just like the games offer. He's playing a role. He knows his role. He's participating in a compelling narrative. There's always a backstory. He knows what his role is in that story, and he can be extemporaneous in that role, but it needs to fit the story. He collaborates with people all over the world. He's playing games in which he cannot win unless his team wins. Sounds business relevant. And he's playing environments that are really fast, where risk is just absolutely expected. Things are transparent. There's a meritocracy. There are numbers flying at you and analytics to let you know how things are going in almost every time domain you can imagine. He thinks it's a pretty fair deal, and he can get to the top if he works hard. So that's a substantially different view of this. So this is what we've been trying to capture, is how that world can be fit into this other world, and we can merge these two. And this is the book that my co-author, Leighton Reed, a venture capitalist from the community here, have tried to capture all this. So I'm going to say a little bit about what's in the book and tell you why we think this might work, of actually melding these two domains of life here. So one of the reasons this might work is that there are getting to be known ingredients, if not recipes, but at least ingredients that we can use to piece together recipes that might provide engaging environments for people to do serious things. And I'll just mention them quickly. These are kind of chapters, so there's quite a bit to see in each of these. Media now, you don't just interact with it. Well, we used to just sit and wait for it to flow over us. Then we got to actually interact with it, and there was contingency, and we got to click stuff, and stuff happened. Now we actually get to jump into the screen. Maybe with just a name or a picture, but maybe an avatar, a full-blown character that moves around and has a representation of myself. This may psychologically be one of the most interesting new things to say about media, is that representation in there is different than anything I've experienced. It's me in a sense, it's a mini-me, but it really feels, and we know experimentally, it's pretty substantial, because what happens to that character in many ways happens to me.